Imagine being the most powerful man in an empire, loved and respected by all. Imagine living in a dazzling palace, surrounded by riches and an invincible army. You have everything anyone could desire, a prosperous nation, a united family, and the heart of an entire people. Now, imagine that at the height of your greatness, you make a mistake that not only puts all of this at risk, but also endangers your soul eternally. This is the story of David and Bathsheba, the sin and repentance of a king. David, the great hero of Israel, the man after God's own heart, found himself facing a dilemma that would change his life forever. What happens to the most righteous man, the one who had already defeated giants and conquered countless victories, when he comes face to face with temptation, when power and pride begin to blind even the most faithful servants of God? During a moment that seemed to be just another day in his grand life, David, with his kingdom prospering, found himself in an unexpected position. One night, while the army of Israel was at war, David, instead of being alongside his men, remained in Jerusalem, in his palace, resting. It was during this period of rest that, while walking on the roof of his palace, he saw something that would change his life forever. The image of Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, one of his valiant soldiers, bathing on the terrace of her house, captured his gaze. Her beauty, something so pure and radiant, was enough to ignite his heart with impure desires. Doubt and remorse soon mixed, but desire was stronger. In his mind, he thought, "I am the king. I am invincible. What is wrong with a little pleasure?" David, now consumed by temptation, sent messengers to bring Bathsheba to him. Even knowing that she was married to Uriah, a man who was far away, fighting on the front lines for his nation, David did not hesitate. He gave in to desire and that night committed adultery with her. It was an act of betrayal not only against Uriah's wife, but against the trust of all the people of Israel, and most importantly, against God. This was the sin of a king, a sin that began to cast a shadow over the life of the most powerful man in Israel. But David's sin did not stop there. A few days later, Bathsheba sent a message to David, "I am pregnant." This simple phrase was the point of no return. Guilt immediately took hold of David's heart, but in his attempt to cover up his sin, he devised a diabolical plan. He summoned Uriah back from the war, hoping that he would lie with Bathsheba, and thus the pregnancy would be attributed to him. However, David's plan failed. Uriah, a man of unquestionable character, refused to go home and enjoy the comfort of his wife while his fellow soldiers faced danger on the battlefield. Immersed in honor and integrity, he preferred to sleep at the palace gate alongside the guards in solidarity with his brothers in arms. David, now desperate, found himself in an even more difficult situation. His lie was not working, and the only way out he saw was even darker. In a decision that would further dishonor his crown, David wrote a letter to Joab, the commander of his army, ordering him to place Uriah on the front lines of battle, where death was almost certain. The letter was handed to Uriah without him knowing the cruel irony that his own king was orchestrating his demise. Uriah was sent into battle, and as David had planned, he was abandoned in the front lines, where he was killed. The death of Uriah, carried out in a cold and calculated manner, allowed David, now free of any suspicion, to take Bathsheba as his wife. But David's victory was hollow, and he did not realize that while he thought the problem had been resolved, God's wrath was building against him. Then God sent the prophet Nathan to David. Nathan, inspired by God, told David a parable. There was a rich man who owned many sheep, but when a traveler arrived at his house, he took the only lamb of a poor man to sacrifice to the guest. David, outraged by the story, exclaimed, This man deserves to die. Nathan, with a firm and courageous gaze, said, "You are that man." David was immediately paralyzed. He could not deny it. He could no longer hide the weight of his transgression. The revelation of David's sin shook his soul. He knew he had done wrong, but now he would face the consequences of his actions. Humbled and broken, David fell to his knees before God. He did not seek excuses, nor did he defend himself. He acknowledged that he had sinned against God and against his own people. In an act of deep repentance, David wrote Psalm 51, a plea for mercy. "Create in me, O God, a pure heart, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." He knew that God's forgiveness was his only hope, but he also knew that his sin had a price. Though God forgave David, the consequences of his actions were inescapable. The son of David and Bathsheba died, a divine punishment that could not be avoided. But David's story did not end in tragedy. Despite his sincere repentance and forgiveness, the scars of his mistakes remained. His reign was still marked by pain, but also by restoration. David's repentance brought him back into God's favor, and his lineage continued, eventually leading to the birth of Jesus Christ. Though flawed, David was still called a man after God's own heart. The story of David and Bathsheba reminds us of a simple yet powerful truth. No matter how faithful we are, we all face moments of weakness, falls, and wrong decisions. But contrary to what many believe, sin is not the end of the journey. It can be the beginning of a new path, a path of sincere repentance, humility, and redemption. Though David had failed deeply, he found forgiveness and restoration because he genuinely repented of his mistake and sought God's mercy. He did not allow himself to be consumed by guilt, but chose to be transformed by divine grace. That is a legacy he leaves us. No matter the magnitude of the mistake, there is always a chance for change, always an opportunity to start anew. For us, David's message is clear. No matter how far you've gone, God is always ready to restore, heal, and forgive. Repentance is a key that opens the door to a new life. Looking at David, we see not just a man who fell, but a man who in his fall found God's grace and forgiveness. Now, as we reflect on this story and the powerful truth it carries, if you also want to learn more about how to turn mistakes into lessons and walk toward a restored life, subscribe to our channel. Here, we discuss stories like this and others that show that no matter your story, God always has something new to write. If you felt touched by this story, if it spoke directly to your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any messages of hope, faith, and restoration. Share it as well with those you know who need to hear this word of redemption and transformation. Together, we can learn, grow, and seek a life closer to God's purpose. Subscribe now and come be part of our journey of faith and learning. Because just like David, we can all be restored, and true strength comes from a heart that surrenders to divine forgiveness.